All right, this is a Y Files reaction to Egyptians and giants, apparently in the Grand Canyon. Let's give it a watch and check it out. I really liked the last one, and let's see where we go from here.
In 1908, President Teddy Roosevelt wanted to declare the Grand Canyon off limits to all timber and mining operations. It would take another 11 years for Congress to designate the Grand Canyon a national park. Sensing a final opportunity for adventure, explorer G.E. Kincaid took a boat down the Colorado River and through the Grand Canyon. The canyon was rich in minerals like gold, silver, and copper, and Kincaid wanted to see what he could find before the area was closed off for good. About 40 miles upriver from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon, Kincaid saw stains in the sediment formation about 2,000 feet up. He tied off the boat and got out to investigate. Kincaid couldn't find a trail, but after a short hike, he found something interesting covered in desert brush. Steps, hundreds of them, carved in sandstone, steps that wound their way up to a high shelf on the side of the canyon. He followed the steps until he came across a cavern entrance, an entrance that was clearly man-made. Kincaid entered the cavern and turned on his flashlight. On the walls, he saw writing, but it wasn't English or Native American writing. It was ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Kincaid lifted his flashlight and saw that the tunnel ran far into the distance. He didn't realize it at the time, but this was only the beginning.
I find it pretty interesting because, for instance, in Mesa Verde, there are locations like that where you can go up the sides of cliffs, and there's literally like entire cities that are carved out in the sides of these cliff sides. Probably because it's really safe from predators and all that other kind of stuff. So, I mean, it makes sense for more primitive humans to do that. As for the Egyptian part, that's some, I have no idea. Let's continue.
When G.E. Kincaid tied off his small wooden boat to investigate the strange coloration of the rock wall, he was hoping to find clues that would lead him to a mineral deposit. He wasn't expecting to find hieroglyphics. When Kincaid noticed chisel marks in the walls, he drew his pistol, turned on another light, and slowly walked deeper into the gloom. He kept detailed notes of everything he saw.
The main passageway is about 12 feet wide, narrowing to 9 feet toward the farther end. About 57 feet from the entrance, the first side passages branch off to the right and left, along which on both sides are a number of rooms about the size of ordinary living rooms of today, though some are 30 by 40 feet square. These are entered by oval-shaped doors and are ventilated by round air spaces through the walls into the passages. The walls are about 3 feet 6 inches in thickness. The passages are chiseled or hewn as straight as could be laid out by an engineer. The ceilings of many of the rooms converge to a center. The side passages near the entrance run at a sharp angle from the main hall, but toward the rear they gradually reach a right angle in direction.
G.E. Kincaid now realized he was in a huge complex. He estimated that as many as 50,000 people could have lived here. In some rooms he found granaries with shelves of glazed pottery, many of which still contain seeds. He found cooking areas and a huge dining hall. The rooms were full of ancient artifacts. Kincaid carefully wrapped a few small metal and ceramic objects for later study. Another large room Kincaid described as an area for metalwork, a technology that should not have existed in this area.
Here are found tools of all descriptions made of copper. These people undoubtedly knew the lost art of hardening this metal, which has been sought by chemicals for centuries without result. On a bench running around the workroom was some charcoal and other material probably used in the process. There's also slag and stuff similar to mat, showing that these ancients smelted ores, but so far no trace of where or how this was done has been discovered, nor the origin of the ore.
G.E. Kincaid explored the underground complex for several hours, still having no idea when this place was used, what it was used for, or who the builders were. Then he came across another large room, a crypt. The crypt had shelf upon shelf and row upon row of mummies, dozens of them. At this point, G.E. Kincaid realized that if he was going to explore this entire underground city, he was going to need help.
That's really interesting because 50,000 people, like if we were today with modern technology to carve out a underground subterranean city that had the capability of holding 50,000 people, that in and of itself would be, yeah, absolutely insane. Add on top of that, trying to get food for those 50,000 people up on that cliffside. I mean, you're not ordering Uber Eats every day. You'd have to. I don't even know. Like that's. I mean, just think about food, water, bathroom needs up on a cliffside. 50,000 people? That's unbelievable on a level that I don't know is even possible. So it's like, holy crap.
G.E. Kincaid sent a few artifacts to the Smithsonian along with his notes of what he found. He requested financial and logistical support for what he felt was the most significant archaeological discovery ever made. The Smithsonian agreed. A few weeks later, Professor S.A. Jordan arrived with a team of about 40 scientists, researchers, and laborers to excavate and explore the ancient underground city. Now with more lights and manpower, the scientists realized that the cave system layout wasn't random. It was a symmetrical, deliberate design. The tunnels all led to a central chamber. In the chamber was a large statue of what Kincaid thought looked like Buddha.
Like butter.
Buddha.
What I say?
Over 100 feet from the entrance is the cross hall, several hundred feet long, in which are found the idol or image of the people's god, sitting cross-legged with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of this face is oriental, and the carving in this cavern. The idol almost resembles Buddha, though the scientists are not certain as to what religious worship it represents. Taking into consideration everything found thus far, it is possible that this worship most resembles the ancient people of Tibet.
To be fair, there are many ancient structures that are carved like directly down into like pure rock in India like this. I forget what it's called, but it's like a rectangular temple that is like the roof of it is flat with the ground and the sides of it are open, and you crawl down into it and you go and worship in this temple. I mean, it's super, super neat. I mean, I don't know how they keep water from getting in there. Maybe they dug some drains or something. I don't know, but super intense, and it does go to say that they did that. I've literally seen a real documentary on the temple itself, so I know it's real. I'm not so sure, but another thing that's kind of interesting is to have Egyptian writing and then worshiping Buddha. You'd have to have a civilization that cross-pollinated years and years and years before we knew about, that occurring. So, plus this is in America. This isn't like over in that side of the world. This is across an ocean. So these are feats that are pretty fucking significant if you really step back and think about it. Anyways, let's continue.
It is possible that this worship most resembles the ancient people of Tibet.
No, I didn't think we were allowed to say Oriental. Are we bringing that back?
We're not. This was written over 100 years ago. So.
Oh, right, when we had freedom of speech.
No, Oriental in this context just means Eastern.
Ah.
Because of this discovery, Kincaid's team started calling the complex the Citadel. The crypt was one of the bigger rooms discovered. Now, with enough light, Kincaid was able to fully describe what he saw.
The walls slant back at an angle of about 35 degrees. On these are tiers of mummies, each one occupying a separate hewn shelf. At the head of each is a small bench, on which is found copper cups and pieces of broken swords. Some of the mummies are covered with clay, and all are wrapped in a bark fabric. The urns or cups on the lower tiers are crude, while as the higher shelves are reached, the urns are finer in design, showing a later stage of civilization. It is worthy of note that all the mummies examined so far have proved to be male, no children or females being buried here. This leads to the belief that this exterior section was the warriors' barracks.
Kincaid, Jordan.
Once again, I don't believe that there are any Native American or descendatory of Asian heritage people who did mummification. I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong on that, but I don't remember hearing anything about it being significant. So, once again, it's like either this guy's just taking his two favorite parts of history and mixing them together in a crazy and fantastic story when he found a city built into the side of a cliffside, and just like the telephone game, it went from holding 250 people to 50,000 people, because there are places like that. On much smaller scale, and minus the hieroglyphics and the Buddha statue and stuff with lotus flowers that aren't like as prominent in the canyon. I don't know, man. It's I don't know. It's pretty sketch, but there are things like that in places like Mesa Verde. That's a perfect example. You can Google Mesa Verde and literally see that there were Native American type tribes who built into the sides of cliff sides. The things that he is describing inside of the caves, written on the walls and the statues and the mummification, these things are suspect to what the fuck is going on. Like it's just like it doesn't really. It's like I don't know. It's like a connect the dot picture that doesn't really add up yet. So let's let this guy continue.
Belief that this exterior section was the warriors' barracks.
Kincaid, Jordan, and the Smithsonian team explored the entire cave complex. They were overwhelmed with evidence that this was not some faraway temple occupied by a few priests. This was a huge city lived in by thousands of men, women, and children for hundreds or possibly thousands of years. The question nobody could answer was, who were they? By the end of the expedition, G.E. Kincaid and Professor Jordan's team had discovered hundreds of rooms, barracks, granaries, metalworking shops, temples, and many, many living quarters. Though most of the rooms were empty, thousands of artifacts were found. They found swords and shields made of copper, bronze, and a gray metal that scientists couldn't identify. They thought it looked like platinum. They found pottery, urns, utensils for cooking, small yellow stones called cat's eyes, and large stone tablets, all engraved with hieroglyphics.
On all the urns or walls over doorways and tablets of stone which were found by the image are the mysterious hieroglyphics, the key to which the Smithsonian Institute hopes yet to discover. The engraving on the tablets probably has something to do with the religion of the people. Similar hieroglyphics have been found in southern Arizona. Among the pictorial writings, only 2 animals are found. One is of prehistoric type.
Even with all the relics and all the writing Kincaid and Jordan found, they were still no closer to determining who built the citadel in the Grand Canyon. They thought some of the statues looked Tibetan, but they weren't quite right. They thought the writing looked Egyptian. Again, that wasn't quite right. There were experts on site, none of whom could identify the statues or translate any of the text. But there were 2 things that the researchers could agree on. One, the civilization that built the citadel was very advanced. far more advanced than the native tribes that occupied the area for a few thousand years. This now lost civilization worked bronze many years before the Bronze Age began. They understood division of labor and agriculture when every other society on Earth was presumably still hunting and gathering. These are discoveries that went against everything that was taught in mainstream archaeology and anthropology. A civilization like this shouldn't exist.
Ooh, what was the second thing?
What?
Well, you said the eggheads agreed on two things. What was the second thing?
Right. They agreed that the civilization that built the Citadel in the Grand Canyon didn't emerge there locally. This civilization arrived there from the other side of the world. Kincaid and Professor Jordan sent boxes of artifacts and books full of notes and drawings back to the Smithsonian, along with their hypothesis that an ancient civilization existed in the Grand Canyon thousands of years before Native Americans arrived in North America. These people were technologically advanced, educated, skilled, and spiritually complex. And these people originated somehow in Egypt or Asia. Kincaid wanted more resources and a larger team to help them research the Citadel and search the Grand Canyon for more evidence of this lost civilization. Their request was denied, and G.E. Kincaid and Professor S.A. Jordan were never heard from again.
Son of a
In northern Arizona is one of the most spectacular natural wonders on Earth, the Grand Canyon. Carved over millions of years by the Colorado River, the Grand Canyon is more than just a pretty landscape and a spot for tourists to take selfies. It's a place of deep spiritual significance for the people who've lived in the area. The Hopi, Navajo, Zuni, Apache, and several other tribes have lived around the Grand Canyon for several thousand years. They still do. Hopi mythology says that from the Grand Canyon, the first people of the world entered. The story says that many thousands of years ago, a reptilian race emerged.
lizard people!
Yep.
Hey, how many times do lizard people have to come up in these stories before you believe in him?
I guess I'm gonna need a few more.
Lizard people are gonna keep popping up, you'll see.
Thousands of years ago, a reptilian race,
Lizard people.
lizard people, emerged from the Grand Canyon and changed into humans.
Lizard people are shapeshifters.
That would seem to be true. Other Pueblo cultures like the Zuni and the Acoma have similar legends that there were people there before the tribes.
Lizard people legends?
Well, some legends say reptilians were there. Other legends say a race of giants were there.
Ooh!
And there are rumors that skeletons of giants have been discovered all over the western United States, but the evidence has been suppressed.
Suppressed by who?
The Smithsonian.
Of course.
Well, once again with the reptilian thing, if you can believe that humans exist, and the small amount of time that our fossil record goes back, and we're as advanced as we are right now, and if you can conceptualize the fantastical idea that there could have been an advanced form of reptilian dinosaur, it would have had enough time to get pretty damn advanced. However, for them just turning into humans, are they insinuating that the first people of that land were reptilian or giants or something? Maybe you have some. It just seems like this guy took like, and I'm not trying to be rude, but it seems like this guy took like a shit ton of different things and just mixed them all together. Like, take some Egyptian stuff, take some Buddhist stuff, take the reptilians, and then we're gonna take the giants. And reptilians with the giants correlates to devils being reptilian, and the whole snake in the garden bit. The giants, that's the Nephilim, after the, angels found the daughters of men, to their liking, and then they mated with them, and then created these offspring that were these giants that's in the Bible. It just seems like there's so many fucking different things, like, thrown into this one deal. It's like, this is a lot from a city on the side of a fucking canyon wall, but, I mean, holy shit. Let's continue.
but the evidence has been suppressed.
Suppressed by who?
The Smithsonian.
Of course.
Something I've learned from doing the show is that all myths and legends do carry a little bit of truth. We already have evidence that people landed in North America before Columbus. The Vikings famously explored and settled parts of Newfoundland 500 years before the quote-unquote New World was quote-unquote discovered. And there's growing evidence that ancient Chinese explorers landed in North and South America before the Vikings. But landing on the east or west coast of America is one thing. Getting to the Grand Canyon is a whole other thing.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I really don't. Especially if that is true. I didn't know that. I had no idea random Chinese people got to North America before Columbus and the Vikings. Okay, had no freaking clue. Is it that outlandish that they left behind some of their culture, and maybe certain parts of it were left along, left there, and the people of this area found that and thought of them as the more ancient people, because they were, and then started worshiping them. I could see mythology and religion popping up like that for humans if we discovered something like that in any part of the world with any group of people. So even modern day retards, they'd be popping off about it. So it's like I don't know. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. But I had no idea that China apparently came over to the United States before Columbus, who was also had the Vikings there before him. So it's like, if that is true, which I don't know, I'm not well versed enough to say, yay or nay on, then I mean, you could conceptualize the fact that this could have actually occurred. Let's continue.
These explorers landed in North and South America before the Vikings, but landing on the east or west coast of America is one thing. Getting to the Grand Canyon is a whole other thing. How could people get there? And even if they could, how did they have the technology to excavate millions of tons of rock in order to build an entire underground city? Well, we may have known the answer to that question for 1,000 years. Traveling from Europe and Asia to America thousands of years ago was almost impossible. Almost. Many brave people did it. But traveling to the Grand Canyon is a much more difficult task than landing on a California beach. To get to and build in the Grand Canyon requires technology. The Hopi have a very intriguing legend about the ant people. These are humanoid creatures that are smaller than humans with pale skin and large eyes like an insect.
Aliens.
According to legend, a series of cataclysms hit the earth many thousands of years ago.
Younger Dryas.
The Hopi were on the verge of being destroyed. A sky god emerged from what they called a moving star.
UFO.
The sky god brought the Hopi to the ant people, who escorted them to underground caves for protection. The sky god then got back into his moving star and flew off above the clouds. The Paiute have a legend about the Havmusuvs. They're usually described as being humanoid in shape with golden skin and large eyes.
Aliens.
They lived in a vast underground city and traded with faraway people. They possessed weapons that the Paiute described as silver tubes that shot lightning and can kill a man instantly.
Phases.
And the most interesting part of the Havmusuv legend? They supposedly flew silver canoes in the sky.
UFOs.
These craft made a humming sound and could maneuver like an eagle and move at great speeds. Most ancient cultures have a flood myth.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, and I mean, and this is a correlation, okay, that's important to think about. All of these ancient religions and beliefs and like origin stories, all of these myths, there are parts that are true and there are parts that are fantastical and pure fantasy, and I probably meant to be in stories. But the fascinating part is that so many of these different groups of people believed in literally near exact similar stories. I mean, even Christianity and like the death of Osiris and the death and rise of Osiris, or Isis and Osiris, that kind of story. Like, it's the 3-day thing. It's just there's always flood myths, as he's about to say. The gods always come from the sky. They're always in flying vehicles of some sort. They're always silver. If you think about what he just said, like, you got the ant people. Well, that sounds like the description of a gray. I'm just going to be completely straight up with you. That's literally what the hell that sounds like. And the golden-skinned people with the larger eyes, that sounds like the Nordics or Aryans or whatever that live in Agartha in the city of Shambhala, in the inner earth through Antarctica, the poles or whatever. Like, there's theories and mysteries, I mean, that are like tied to these things, and could just all be complete total horseshit. But the point is that it's really, really neat that so many religions all have this correlating idea of this. I think it's fascinating. It also brings into the mind like the whole thing on dragons, and I don't mean to take like a side thing here, but that's another thing. During the medieval times and prior, there were documentation of things like dragons, and this goes across the majority of the planet Earth, like literally the majority of Earth, and humans fought these things. Now, we do know that reptiles evolved more often than not into birds. Now, if we had an in-between type, branch of evolutionary possibility, where their bones were extremely fragile and it was extremely hard to preserve them, I mean, maybe that's something that could also be a coincidence or a possibility. But it's just interesting to really think about all of the correlations. I'm going to reverse back so we can hear it again, but there are so many instances of like Odin coming down in his, by his way, and it's a ship. You have Mount Olympus, like the whole temple, like landing on top of the mountain, and that's why it was up there. You have, God descending from the heavens and doing blah, 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 and a lot of the time in the ancient scriptures and, let me rephrase it. In the ancient pictures, not scriptures, but pictures, painted back in the day, you can actually see weird shit in the sky of a lot of these paintings that they put in there. Anyways, let's go back here and let's hear what this guy has to say one more time. Let's continue.
Have a very intriguing legend about the ant people. These are humanoid creatures that are smaller than humans, with pale skin and large eyes like an insect.
Aliens.
According to legend, a series of cataclysms hit the Earth many thousands of years ago.
Young Adrias.
The Hopi were on the verge of being destroyed. A sky god emerged from what they called a moving star.
UFO.
The sky god brought the Hopi to the ant people, who escorted them to underground caves for protection. The sky god then got back into his moving star and flew off above the clouds. The Paiute have a legend about the Havmusuvs. They're usually described as being humanoid in shape with golden skin and large eyes.
Aliens.
They lived in a vast underground city and traded with faraway people. They possessed weapons that the Paiute described as silver tubes that shot lightning and can kill a man instantly.
Phases.
And the most interesting part of the Havmusuv legend? They supposedly flew silver canoes in the sky.
UFOs.
These craft made a humming sound and could maneuver like an eagle and move at great speeds. Most ancient cultures have a flood myth. They describe a global disaster that melted the ice caps and caused sea level to rise 400 feet. Entire cities were wiped out, maybe even entire continents.
Atlantis.
Most of these flood myths also talk about how, after the waters receded, a godlike people came down from the sky. These gods gave humans the gift of civilization and taught them things they had forgotten before the Great Flood. Things like writing, astronomy, and agriculture. Could the city in the Grand Canyon be evidence of this time in history? And if it is, why would anyone want to suppress it? All the information in today's episode comes from 2 front-page articles from the Phoenix Gazette published in 1909. In the years since, mainstream researchers have decided that the articles were a hoax, a fantastic story designed to sell newspapers.
19th century clickbait?
Yep,
The media hasn't changed much.
unfortunately that's true. But many people believe the story is real, and the Smithsonian is covering it up.
Smithsonian Public Relations, Marion speaking.
Hold on. Hello?
Hello?
Hello? I'm here. Sorry, I was on hold a long time.
How can I help you?
They transferred me to Marion.
Yes, this is Marion.
Okay, great. My name is AJ, and I'm with the Y-Files. We're a YouTube channel that covers mysteries.
Did you say you're from YouTube?
The Y-Files is a channel on YouTube, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you about an article that was in the Phoenix, Arizona Gazette in 1909, and they sent me to you. I was hoping to ask you a couple of questions about that.
Okay, let me stop you. No Egyptian artifacts of any kind have ever been found in North or South America.
Sounds like you've given that speech before.
Yes, I get this call a couple of times a year. I can tell you that the Smithsonian has never been involved in anything like this in the Grand Canyon or anywhere.
So, G.E. Kincaid,
There's no record of anyone by that name ever working for the Smithsonian. The whole thing is a hoax.
yeah, that's the prevailing belief, but the Smithsonian has been accused of covering this up, so
Yeah, I don't have a response to that.
you probably don't want to talk about giants or giant skeletons, huh?
And goodbye.
That's the official story. Kincaid's cave is a hoax.
You know, this is what I've never really understood about people. Even if something is complete horseshit, complete and total horseshit, why would you be so like, shut it down, fuck off? Like, it seems defensive. And I like, believe me, there's a lot about this story I don't believe at all. But just the mentality behind that just seems so fucking juvenile to just like immediately like, nope, just shut up. Nah. It's just like, you sound like an idiot who's just stuck in their ways, who doesn't like, it's like, have an open mind, be able to conceptualize things. Even if you're talking to someone, say, you know, if, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit more of an entertainer than I am just a, you know, fact spitter who might work at the Smithsonian. But it's like, I would have at least like been like, well, I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. I have no records on it. There's nothing here that shows that, but you know, you never know. There's, you know, it's been a long time. You know, there's lots of possibilities. I wouldn't just like kill someone's hope for things unless it's completely fucking retarded, which I don't really think that giants are retarded. I think that that's pretty obvious. I think that that's not that outlandish. I think that there are civilizations that literally live on cliff sides. They don't have to be Egyptian, but you don't have to be a bitch about it. And there are no Egyptians in, you know, North or South America. It's like, okay, relax there, chick. Okay, all you gotta say is there may not be, you know, Egyptians found there or evidence of that, but there are other, you know, native, you know, groups to the location that did perform things like that. So it may be this, it may be that, but once again, we have no records of this person actually existing or working at the Smithsonian. So it points to being more of a hoax than not. Like, I feel like there's a better way to say it. Maybe I'm nitpicking here, but I don't know. I just didn't like that, the way it seemed fake. Like she's just like either you're so against, like religiously against something, or you're just, I don't know, a bitch for no reason. But I don't know, maybe her job's super hard answering questions on history on the phone. But I don't know.
Have a response to that.
You probably don't want to talk about giants or giant skeletons, huh?
And goodbye.
That's the official story. Kincaid's cave is a hoax, so no reason to try and find it, nothing to see here. Even Kincaid himself wanted to keep people out.
First, I would impress that the cavern is nearly inaccessible. The entrance is 1,486 feet down the sheer canyon wall. It is located on government land and no visitor will be allowed there under penalty of trespass. The scientists wish to work unmolested, without fear of archaeological discoveries being disturbed by curio or relic hunters. A trip there would be fruitless, and the visitor would be sent on his way.
Whether at the request of the Smithsonian or just to protect his find, it was clear that Kincaid wanted to dissuade people from finding the Citadel. But even over 100 years later, that wouldn't stop people from trying. And some of those people, they say they found it. Jerry Wills and his wife Kathy have been studying the Kincaid Cave mystery for years. Their approach was find the original base camp of the explorers, which would lead them to the cave. After years of research and exploring the area where G.E. Kincaid said he found the cave, Jerry and Kathy found a location covered in artifacts from that time. And on the canyon wall just below this area, they believe is the entrance to the underground city. Exploring is difficult though. The entire area where the cave is supposed to be is designated off limits by the federal government.
I saw that coming.
About 1,000 caves have been discovered in the Grand Canyon, many of them man-made, but only about 30 have been mapped, and many of those have been sealed.
I close them off.
Oh, for your safety.
That's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, I don't buy the safety excuse either. There are plenty of people who'd be willing to take the risk, and they'd be willing to sign a waiver that says the government isn't responsible if something happens. In fact, people have tried this. The government still says no, it's too dangerous.
How nice of the government to look out for us.
Isn't that nice? Then why is it legal to jump out of a plane or ride a roller coaster or drive a car? Some things in life are dangerous, but they're still worth doing.
This is a really good point. It seems sketch. It really does. You know, I mean, there's a lot of this that seems completely fictitious, but I've seen, like personally, when I went to Mesa Verde, I've seen other little alcoves and stuff that were blocked off, just like that picture right now. Like, I've seen that. That's actually something that they realistically do. You can see that it is off limits. You know, there's certain areas where you can go. There's certain areas where you can't go. But I mean, it is, yeah, it's a different deal. So I don't know. I just, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, unless they have like pottery and bullshit in there, which then, you know, no offense, but if, especially in modern day, if they haven't excavated that shit, then they don't give a fuck about it enough to do that. And if that's the case, then it doesn't really necessarily matter if people go in there and start fucking around. It's just, I don't know, maybe, like, I would say, you know, they don't want to be responsible for anything, but it's like, if, you know, once again, if you have them sign a waiver and you go ahead and you say, this is an off-limits zone, if you go in there, you get your shit fucking rocked by, you know, falling off a cliff or getting eaten by vultures or some random shit, like, you know, it's on you, bro. Like, if they had, like, you know, a sign that said that shit, and, you know, all around the perimeter of where they, you know, are worried about, or right there at the entrance, I think, you know, touche, you know, have a good time, you know, but, you know, because there's people also swimming in you know, lakes with fucking crocodiles and shit, and you know, which is actually dangerous, you know, because those threats are actually hunting you. These threats are just, you know, mishaps and missteps. So I don't know. I mean, it's a really, really, really good point on, why block it off. It's kind of like with the Vatican and keeping all their shit archived, like that, like no one can see and stuff. Why? Does it disprove something that you say? Is something about it bullshit? What's going on here that makes it so that you have to lock it away and archive it behind such lock and key that it's like in like these super controlled archives underneath the Vatican, underneath Vatican City, that has its own like small like its own government and military and shit. It's like, I don't know, man. I just think that it's sketch. It's like, why not? Like, or at the very least, have maybe go in there and then have someone re-go over all the shit and then remake an alternative version. They can keep their originals behind closed doors and stuff, and then show the copies. But that's not exactly what's happening. It's just that there's no information coming out about that. Just kind of like this. It's like there's a way that they could allow people to go in there and squash all the qualms they have with their theories, but they don't allow it out of the pursuit of safety, which I mean, is fair in some cases, but is complete bullshit. For the most part, if people are willing to sign their lives away. I don't know. I think that should be. I think that goes into the realm of what rules, laws, and legislation correlate and step over the line of delineation from free will into control and allowance. I really do. But anyways, let's continue.
Coaster or drive a car. Some things in life are dangerous, but they're still worth doing. Some other caves in the Grand Canyon have been blocked by steel gates. They say this is to protect the bat population.
Whoa. Did you say bats? We have to protect the bats?
That's what they say.
Well, haven't bats caused enough problems these last few years?
Well, that makes more sense because farming guano, which is bat dung, is an actual practice. But once again, I mean, these are caves along cliff sides and stuff, extremely hard to maneuver. It wouldn't be cost efficient or time efficient to try and get people and shit over there for just bat guano, where there's multiple other locations to source that and not run into having to excavate it from the side of a cliff wall. But it's partially, I can understand the guano thing. I don't think that it's like to save bats because they're people are gonna go in there with BB guns or something. But I think that it's more along the lines of guano and stuff like that. But once again, that then just comes down to, I guess, affecting their habitat, which I guess you could, green thumb that up your ass, with that thought process. But I don't know. It doesn't seem as legitimate, especially in modern day in the United States. Like, there are other countries where this is more prominent, and this is like, they make pottery and stuff out of bat guano and stuff. Like, I believe that there's some African tribes that do that. But for that not to be allowed in America, it just seems like an obfuscation from just, we don't want you to hurt yourself.
Allegedly.
Still, people are willing to risk a fine or imprisonment to find the lost city in the Grand Canyon. But anyone who goes looking should expect a response. When Jerry and Kathy's team tried to explore the area, suddenly an unmarked plane appeared. Clearly, they were being watched. Despite this part of the Grand Canyon being a no-fly zone, and the fact that no aircraft is allowed to fly below the rim, a plane appeared. Jerry Wills is convinced this was a warning. His team was unable to continue their expedition.
See, the only thing that these sort of like militaristic interventions make sense for would be is if there were tunnels to hidden bases, like Area 51 on steroids kind of thing, at these locations that, you know, they don't necessarily want prying eyes to get to. Maybe, I guess, like for like emergency exits for these things, they can go out through these other means, but even that is kind of a stretch, to be completely honest. I mean, if you want to think about the inner Earth theory and say that, you know, the Earth is, you know, we know the Earth is cavernous and all this other kind of stuff, and there are different life forms in there. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, that's more of a fantastical idea, but it does make you wonder, especially flying below the rim of the Grand Canyon's like super hyper dangerous, for one, and for two, extremely illegal because of how dangerous and ridiculous it is. You know, you don't want jet fuel leaking into the Colorado River. That's a source of water for many states, believe it or not. So anyway, it makes a lot of sense for that. Why they're there? That raises more eyebrows than it does, you know, answer questions.
Clearly, they were being watched. Despite this part of the Grand Canyon being a no-fly zone, and the fact that no aircraft is allowed to fly below the rim, a plane appeared. Jerry Wills is convinced this was a warning. His team was unable to continue their expedition. Exploring the cave from above is almost impossible. But what about exploring it from below, as G.E. Kincaid did? Another group of explorers tried this. As they approached the location, a black helicopter showed up. Not a tourist helicopter, not even a black civilian helicopter, an Apache combat helicopter. When this team explored the area above, looking for the ventilation shafts Kincaid wrote about, and possibly a way down, they found cement blocks in the middle of nowhere. Some of these blocks are platforms near the edge of the rim with hardware and anchors that would be used to assist mountaineers. When asked about this, the authorities say these are reinforcing structures to prevent rockfalls. Also in this forbidden zone, rock formations have unusual names. There's Isis Temple, Tower of Set, Horus, the Cheops Pyramid, and Ra. There's also the Manu Temple, the Buddha Temple, the Krishna Temple, and the Shiva Temple, and many more names that refer to ancient Egyptian and Hindu cultures that specifically have myths about a god helping civilization after the Great Flood. The official word is, the fact that these names exist within the Grand Canyon's no-go zone is a coincidence. But I don't really believe in those. Do you?
Quick idea before you get started here. Why doesn't someone just with a drone stand on the edge, go and fly in the bitch? I don't know why I haven't thought about that until just now, but seems like a pretty done deal at that point. I mean, granted, if they are gating all these things off like dickheads, that does, give you a little bit of a problem. You'd have to be super, super good at flying your drone. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Let's watch.
Believe in those. Do you? David Hatcher Childress is a French author who's published 200 books. He often covers ancient mysteries. He believes the United States government is actively suppressing archaeological discoveries. He mentions that while the film Raiders of the Lost Ark is fiction, the final scene showing the warehouse is close to reality. That the Smithsonian, an independent federal agency, is hiding some of the most important discoveries made in the Americas. He says the cover-up began in 1881.
The reason why I believe what he is talking about right now is because the Vatican do it too. And we know the Vatican do it. So for the Smithsonian to do it, I don't think is an extreme stretch. We already know other organizations do this.
Important discoveries made in the Americas. He says the cover-up began in 1881 with famous geologist John Wesley Powell. Powell appointed Cyrus Thomas the director of the Eastern Mound Division of the Smithsonian Institution's Bureau of Ethnology. When Thomas came to the Smithsonian, he believed there was a race of mound builders that were distinct from and arrived before the American Indians. This school of thought is called diffusionism, which says throughout history, there's been a widespread dispersion of culture and civilization, even across great distances. The Smithsonian took the opposite approach. It promoted isolationism.
You know, and I think that there's something to be said about this. I mean, the similarities with the religions, the similarities with the flood story, the similarities with origin stories, the similarities with the temples and pyramid structures that are built all over the world, mostly around the equator. I mean, there's a very, very, very large amount of information that kind of spits in the face of isolationism. Just being completely honest with you, it just does, you know. Even with how Asian people of Asian descent crossed the land bridge, came into North America, and they're now the Native American people. There's just isolationism is, in my opinion, more narrow-sighted than it is open-minded. Just my opinion.
Instances. The Smithsonian took the opposite approach. It promoted isolationism, which says most civilizations are isolated from each other and have little contact, especially when separated by large bodies of water. It was held that the advanced and highly populated civilizations of the Ohio and Mississippi valleys were rare, and that they didn't have contact with other advanced cultures like the Aztecs, the Toltecs, or the Maya. But the Mississippi River runs from Canada all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. To say these cultures were isolated is like saying that people in the Black Sea had no contact with people in the Mediterranean. That's ridiculous. When ancient mounds of the American Midwest are examined, they show the existence of a complex culture, cities larger than those in Europe at the time. They also show burials of extremely tall people, sometimes 7 or 8 feet tall. When the Spiro mounds were excavated in the 1930s, 7 and 8 foot tall skeletons were found, at a time when the average height of a human male was about 5'6". Those skeletons have been lost. In 1892,
you know, and that's another thing. Like, there are actual skeletal records from late 1900s or late 1800s, early 1900s of these archaeological finds, and they have literally been, okay, well, we're going to take them, we're going to store them and make sure they're taken care of, and then they quote unquote lose them. I think, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but something is going on with that. The whole giant thing, I don't know. First of all, who gives a shit if there's giants? That's fucking, like, why even not want to have that? Just think about that for a second. Who gives a shit if there were taller people? Like, we're not saying that they're like werewolves or some shit. It's like, oh no, there were taller people and they're giants. That was just another branch of, like, you've got the Denisovans, the Neanderthals, and the Homo erectus, which is, Homo sapiens, us. It's like, you can have another one. Like, I don't know, like, to me, it seems like either it's all fabricated, all the giant shit is completely fabricated bullshit, and they just do a really fucking good job, or there'd have to be some significant reason why you'd want to keep the idea of giants out of the general population's mindset. But that's just me.
Was about 5'6". Those skeletons have been lost. In 1892, stone coffins were discovered in Alabama by Frank Burns during a geological survey. The coffins were about 7.5 feet long, hollowed out by fire and metal chisels. The findings were sent to the Smithsonian. In 1984, this report was found by researcher Frederick J. Pohl. He asked the Smithsonian about this. They said, "We have not been able to find the specimens in our collections, though records show that they were received."
Well, how do you lose giant stone coffins?
That weighed several tons? I don't know.
And never underestimate the incompetence of the federal government.
8 years later, the Smithsonian said they found the coffins, but they were stored in a warehouse that was contaminated by asbestos, so nobody could go in there to see them.
See, does that not sound like some big sack of fucking bullshit? Like, no offense. First of all, there are ways to go around asbestos or whatever the hell it is, because I've worked on safes that had that as insulation. It's bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. That's bullshit. Saying that they can't get to it because it's in a warehouse that is like, toxic or something. Fucking bullshit.
Stored in a warehouse that was contaminated by asbestos, so nobody could go in there to see them. During World War II, a crew was building an airship in Alaska. They excavated a mound that had gigantic human remains, skeletons twice or 3 times the size of a normal human. This report has been confirmed by multiple sources. The Smithsonian collected the findings, and that was the last anyone heard about it. There are stories like this from Alaska all the way down to Mexico City. An amazing discovery is made, the Smithsonian steps in, the story disappears. The saying, "skeletons in your closet," means you have secrets you don't want revealed. Secrets that, if discovered, would be embarrassing and possibly dangerous. In the case of the Smithsonian, skeletons in the closet could be taken literally. But the government literally has evidence that an advanced race was in North America long before the native tribes arrived. Evidence they don't want revealed. Mainstream science says this is nonsense. But the Hopi and other Grand Canyon tribes do believe this. The Hopi say that when the first people emerged from the Grand Canyon, they sent a message to the Temple of the Sun asking for a blessing of peace. That messenger hasn't returned. But even today in Hopi villages, at sundown, tribal elders can be seen on rooftops, gazing toward the setting sun, waiting for the messenger to come home. And when he does, the ancient land will be returned to the first people. Now that's an optimistic belief. The United States spent 200 years taking land from the first people. You really think they're going to give it back?
I mean, I don't really think that that's here nor there. I mean, yeah. Yeah, and in Rome, they said Rome's going to rise again. Bro, zero care about that. I mean, yeah, was it fucked up for him? Yeah, of course, but it is what it is, kind of thing. The Vikings also did horrible shit. The Genghis Khan also did horrible shit. People in all over the world did bad shit. I don't know. I think that as long as you're not doing anything that correlates with that bad shit, I don't think you should give a shit. Just learn from it and move on. Don't be emotional about it. That's my 2 cents there. I think the more that you emotionally try to hold on to things like that, you're really just hindering yourself and holding yourself back. If you see someone committing actions that correlate with that, then sure, stand up in opposition. But if you're just crying about spilled milk, you're just creating a bigger mess to clean up.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. My name is AJ. That's Hecklefish. This has been the Y-Files. If you had fun or learned anything, do us a favor and like, subscribe, comment, and share. That stuff really helps the channel. And like most topics we cover here, today's was recommended by you. So if there's a story you'd like to see or learn more about, go to theyfiles.com/tips. And special thanks to our patrons who make this channel possible. Without our Patreon members, there would be no Y-Files. If you'd like to support the channel, consider becoming a member on Patreon or grabbing something from the Y-Files store. I know inflation is making everyone jack their prices, but we have not.
Oh, you got any tinfoil hats up there yet?
Not yet.
Well,
Yeah. So, anyways, in conclusion, there's definitely some sketchy stuff going on with the Smithsonian. Um, uh, I did not know that people from China had sailed to North America. That was just completely new information to me. As for giants, I believe them. I believe in them and don't see why anyone should care. That's my take. As for the government, side of things, there's have to be a pretty strong reason to have military intervention like that, to guard a location like that. That sounds like some Area 51 type stuff. It really does. So, for all we know, maybe there's a correlation there, maybe not. As for the reptilian stuff, I mean, sure, but once again, it's kind of like the giants. It's like I mean, I could see it happening, but I mean, I'm not like gonna be like it's what's going down. It's like, oh yeah, primates evolved, mammals evolved, and then primates, and then offshoots, and then we got humans. That makes sense to me. Okay. Someone says the same thing could have happened with a reptilian race. It's like, well, is there other intellectual races? Well, you got dolphins, you got cuttlefish, you got octopus. A lot of other races are, intelligent. I mean, I believe that a cuttlefish has the intelligence of like a 5-year-old or something, 4 or 5-year-old. So, a human, by the way. So that's pretty impressive right there. But once again, it has to have the necessity to grow higher levels of intelligence, usually with having opposition that it has to intellectually outwit, which is kind of how humans came to be, where we are evolutionarily. Um, Cuttlefish tend to be more isolated, so it makes sense for them not to advance as much. Other species, they communicate, they do their thing, but once they reach a level of comfortability, I think that comfortability stops evolutionarily progressive states. I really do. I think that life tries to find itself a balance or a sweet spot where it, as its organism, exists in the most efficient way for it possible. Then an example of this would be sharks or alligators and crocodiles, who have been the same way for a very, very long time. Um, yeah, so I mean, reptilians, sure, I could see it, whatever. Giants, I could see that even way more. Um, People coming to America with other beliefs, I could see that too. I mean, I could see cross pollination between ancient cultures and societies. I could see that. I don't think that that's extremely outlandish for me to say. I think that that's pretty on point. But yeah, I think that this was another really good video. Interesting. Um, you know, and it brings up a lot more questions. Uh, and I like pondering about stuff. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys.